Danger Dolan. So this year I was fortunate enough to be able to go to BlizzCon. Now I've never been there before. It took me a while to get there from Australia to America. It was about a 15-hour flight. It cost me quite a good deal of money, but it was worth it. I've always wanted to go there. I've never really had the chance, and I was super excited to see what the next expansion was. The lines were huge, and I can tell you my exact reaction when I first saw the trailer, because I lined up incredibly early just to be able to get a front row, just to be able to see Chris Metzen announce this next thrilling expansion set as he always does. And this wasn't like the Pandaria trailer where I had like a full minute of exploring all the things we did before this expansion, and then, you know, just some clips of some architecture and trees and stuff. No, this was full on Draenor and the story behind it, and all the battles, like the humongous Grons standing up with the cannons on their back. It was pretty intense. It wasn't the same feeling I had when I saw Burning Crusade announced, or Wrath of the Lich King, or Cataclysm, because each one, the first two, were taken from Warcraft 3. You get to fight Illidan, you get to fight Arthas. The third one, obviously the whole Azeroth revamp, which I'd been begging for years. The Warlords of Draenor kind of encompasses the Warcraft 2 era, and I hadn't played it that much at the time. I only ever got the PlayStation version of it. I mean, I only would have been about 7 or 8 years old at the time, and I never really got past the first few levels. But I, and I'm sure a lot of other people can attest to this, was very confused when the trailer played and they didn't really explain what was going on. Like, as soon as the trailer ended, pretty much everyone was turning to each other like, What the hell just happened? Draenor? Isn't that Outland? Isn't that already there? And then eventually the panel came out and they're like, guys, we understand, like we know this is confusing stuff. We'll explain it all. And they did, you know. But at the time, as soon as the trailer ended, I had no idea what was going on. And the thing that kind of sucked about being at BlizzCon, one of the few things, is you couldn't find out the internet's reaction, like unless you're on your phone or you're on your iPad or Android tablet, whatever. At the time, I didn't have anything because, you know, I didn't have any technology that was based in America, so I couldn't find out how people felt about it. But I know now, people like everything they showed. They got kind of confused with the time travel stuff, which I thought was kind of baloney. When they had the lore panel and people were saying that it's all timey-wimey and everything, and I could see Chris Metzen's face, like, as if he just had this like cringy face, like he knew this was going to happen. He knew people would be confused, even though they put all this stuff in place to make sure people wouldn't be confused. People still focus on the time travel element. Although in saying that, Chris Metzen did try to explain the time travel stuff and failed horribly. I mean, I've done a 10-second video explaining the Warlords of Draenor timeline, but essentially it's an alternate universe set in the past, and if the people from that universe enter ours, we're fucked. That's it. But what I want to do right now is dive into the nitty-gritty of whether or not this expansion is going to succeed or fail, because I had my initial reaction at BlizzCon. The whole excitement of being at BlizzCon kind of dilutes my opinion, because, you know, you're so hyped about seeing it. No matter if they displayed like a roasting a ham as the trailer for about 2 minutes, I still would have been, yes, BlizzCon, this is awesome. So now I can take a step back and objectively analyze a lot of the features that they're introducing in this expansion, whether or not they're going to succeed, and if they'll bring back the subs lost from the end of Cataclysm and also from Pandaria. And so let's have a look at some viewer comments, starting with Guzu Tak. What I'm really excited about is the announced changes they will make to leveling. They said they will introduce more open world exploration to it, much like Timeless Isle, which was downright awesome. I think that leveling has gone stale and monotonic. That's a cool word. Having one questline which you blindly follow without any alternatives. If they go through with this, it will be an utterly welcomed change. I totally agree with Gazutak that the timeless isle questing was unique and it was extremely good. I love the whole non-linear, spontaneous, with one daily quest for structure on this crazy island full of dangerous things. It was a very nice breath of fresh air to the whole formula of go here and kill 20 of these things and collect some flowers. So you have areas with these super powerful mobs, and when you kill them you get bonus rep because you've put in the effort, you're avoiding stuff, you're doing the right things. Stuff like that. It's like options where you can go to an easier area on the island and just kill a bunch of elite mobs and you're all good. But then you can go to this fire area full of extremely dangerous mobs. You maybe get a group together and farm some rep. Things like that is something we don't have in the game yet, because you level up from 1 to 90 and it's extremely simple. Like if you do a dungeon, simple. If you do quests, it's extremely more simple. It's simpler than that. All these options for content, especially when you do open world stuff, in which there's a vast focus on it during an expansion, because you're leveling from 90 to 100. That's the first thing you do when you get an expansion. You do all the leveling content with maybe some dungeons. And it's not just options, you have variety with these quests. You can have an ordinary quest and you can have some of this non-linear stuff. It's all good. It all blends together and makes a very nice experience. The only suggestion I would say for something like the Timeless Isle, we have all these, the focus is on like rare mobs, them dropping pets and mounts and that kind of thing. You need an inbuilt rare coordinator. You need a thing that counts down to a specific time, because when you kill a rare mob, it takes between half an hour and an hour for it to respawn, and it can respawn in any period between those numbers. And yet, there is no indication of this on the map, or in the actual world. You got no way unless you get an add-on. So they need to refine the system, because casual players aren't going to bother. If you're not using add-ons, that makes you a casual player. But at the same time, it should not be needed. Just like the group finder that they're introducing, just like deadly boss mods, things like that. Maybe not to the full extent that the add-on does, but elements of it need to be in the game because they're mandatory. So some may disagree with what I'm about to say, but like Guzzo wrote in his comment, leveling right now is kind of bland. Some people like the story, say when you level up from 85 to 90. You got a lot of story in Pandaria, they put a lot of effort into fleshing out a lot of the history, right? But the actual leveling experience, a lot of the reason people get turned off from even playing WoW, just from playing it, not doing any of the endgame or anything like that, is because when they think about what you have to do in the game, they immediately think, oh, you gotta kill 20 boars and collect some flowers, when that is just a very small part of the game. There's no way to fix this instantly. It's just a stigma that is attached to the entire genre. Now, this will get better in Warlords. As I said before, they've got this new questing system where the story stuff is clearly defined in a very structured way. You go from one town to another town, and in those towns you have the developing story in the grand arc of the expansions story. And you got side quests that help flesh out the world. It's kind of like trash mobs in instances, they help flesh out the actual instance, even though most people don't even care about that kind of thing. I'm kind of hoping that, I cannot believe they didn't use scenarios as a replacement for group quests when you're leveling. I thought that was the entire point of their introduction during Pandaria. I seriously hope this time they get it right. When you're leveling up, you got dungeons, right? You got quests, but then scenarios, they help get people together it's in story stuff. Say you finish a huge story chain in Frostfire Ridge, right? And at the end, you got this giant scenario that encompasses this huge battle or something that maybe they can't even fit into the world without heavy phasing. Then they just send you and 2 other people into this cool scenario. Because right now, the only group quests I say with quotations, are just those rare mobs, which half the time, they just scale to however many people are there attacking it. And you don't really need other people for that. They're improving a lot of the ways in which you can get people together at endgame, like giving bonus valor if you group with your friends. But when you're leveling up, A lot of people don't even care about grouping with others. You don't need other people to level up. I mean, when you do dungeons, you just click a button and you automatically get allotted to a group. But when you're doing quests, they're so easy, they're so just mind-numbingly joke-worthy that people don't do them. Whereas scenarios, if they're difficult enough, that's just a group environment without doing a stupid group quest. Which, if you can't get a group together at like 4 AM, turns into this thing in your quest log that you just stare at sometimes, hoping you'll finish it one day. Of course, there are risks to what Gazutax suggests about making everything a lot more like the Timeless Isle. On occasion, the non-linear, spontaneous version of questing is good. It's good in variety, just like all things. But when you overuse it, when your pendulum swings towards everything is suddenly Timeless Isle, non-linear, do whatever, then suddenly everyone is sick of it. Which is pretty much exactly what happened with dailies. When they introduced dailies, people do them too much, they get burnt out, and suddenly they develop their own stigma. I do not want to see the old questing system disappear. I don't want to see dailies disappear. I think it's good to spread them out because no one wants an overdose of any of these things. I might say that people don't like that old system of kill 20 boars and collect some flowers. But I don't want it to go away. A lot of people don't want it to go away. They're so used to it. I like switching off my brain and watching something on my other monitor while I'm just mindlessly leveling up. I like that. And something like the Timeless Isle, and Timeless Isle is more of a wait for a rare mob type of game with a daily quest to kill a bunch of things. Because at the end of the day, more dynamic stuff in the vein of Final Fantasy XIV or Rift, you should not overdo it. We shouldn't have to have everything turn into Timeless Isle, but as long as we have variety and not some kind of a system overhaul where we get rid of the old questing system, I think we should be fine. I would also like to see more scenarios used, and if this is not asking for too much, I would like to see endgame world content, not raiding or anything like that. You know, doing something like the Timeless Isle when you're already a raider. I want to see reasons to do it when you're getting gear in a raid. Like if you want to get pets or mounts or achievements or anything like that, that's all good and everything. That's the kind of stuff is optional. But a way to progress your character in the world, garrisons are a step in the right direction. But I want to see more reasons for my character to want to go to some old questing zone. Just like in Burning Crusade, where sometimes you would get sent to Nagrin to go kill some things for the Shattered Sun. I want more stuff like that. Now moving on to the next comment by Brother Cole 1994. I want heroics to be harder. If they have the difficulty of the heroics in MOP, I will not be staying for too long. Me neither, buddy. I need a good, hard challenge to keep me interested in the game. I never thought I would see the day I could solo heroics as a disc priest. It just isn't right. So I'm very happy they have announced heroics are going to be harder. I hope Blizzard sticks to their guns on this. So a lot of people on the forums have been talking about this, and Ghostcrawler as well, even after he's left. He said specifically, if it were up to me, there would be the LFG dungeons with a pretty simple difficulty, and then you have optional, puggable heroics, in which the difficulty is quite a step up, just like heroic scenarios today. Of course, the key to remember here, the Cataclysm heroics, people immediately jump to those and say, well, that's the reason we don't have hard heroics, because everyone hated them at the start of Cataclysm. The fact is, the reason that failed is because it was a button click to start a Cataclysm heroic when they weren't intended to be done with randoms, alright? You should be getting your own people together and then explain all the fights, but people weren't doing that. They just wanted to click a button, get the loot and get out. So they failed not because they were too difficult, they were actually quite simple. Like, if you break it down and have a look at what they were, all they required was just some thought like CC and knowing a boss, you know, what they do. Basically, if you step into a raid, you have to know all this stuff anyway. But because of the LFG system, everyone died and hated it. I loved it because I was a tank and I had to do stuff, but if they make them too difficult, even if these dungeons are puggable, right? So I'm talking raid style dungeons, in which case you have to know every single mechanic on the boss. People have to explain this. You probably have to have voice chat. As tempting as that idea sounds in a 5-man environment, because like my immediate reaction would be yes, yes, get this in the game now. The thing you have to remember, it might interfere with raiding as it stands today. Okay, raid schedules, they revolve around people doing say 10 or 25 man content. You have like 3 days a week to do that kind of thing. 5 mans are meant to be done pretty much any time of the day. Kind of like flex mode, in which case you can group up with any randoms and start doing it. You don't necessarily need voice chat, it helps, but you can still clear it with a bunch of randoms that you've got together in a pug and you're all good. But the thing is, flex mode revolves around these boss fights that were tuned to be quite difficult, to be lethal, that all these mechanics, they encompass, all these different classes and everything's tuned to the letter for heroic, normal, flex, and LFR modes. Whereas 5-mans, as I said, all the 5-mans we've done before were never intended to be super difficult. They were intended to be, just something fun to do on the side that you gear up with. So if you were to scale up all of our old 5-mans from the other expansions to max level to this day, they would probably fail quite hard, because they don't take into account the fact that you can only have a certain number of classes and specs and all of this in your 5-man team. Which means some fights are just ridiculously easier for different classes. Something like challenge mode, I feel, is about the limits of what you can take it. Now, I'm not saying challenge modes should be the harder dungeons that I'm talking about. Challenge modes are just the timed runs that people do on the side, because it's all scaled gear levels and all of this. It's just something different. It's not the same as what I'm talking about. So even if they could somehow manage to have 5-man progression, because they can tune the difficulty to the difficulty seen in raids, even if they could do that, the risk is that guild masters would start scheduling nights instead of doing some kind of a farm night in, say, normal or flex mode. They start saying, okay, we're going to go progress in 5-mans because we're pretty much done with this raid difficulty. Suddenly everyone starts doing 5-mans when raiding is supposed to be the end game. It might work in the gearing curve, so instead of jumping straight into a raid, so you just get rid of LFR, and instead of LFR you have 5-mans that are quite difficult, and that's how you gear up to do raids. That would work fine, but the instant you provide an alternative for people, instead of doing a raid, instead you can just do this 5-man with bosses that aren't really relevant to the story in the expansion. That's kind of not good. So instead you just take the ideas of heroic scenarios and transfer them to dungeons. You just make it so that a lot of the stuff from Cataclysm, the early Cataclysm dungeons, you just reintroduce that into the game, but you don't give them a button to push that can automatically allot you into a team. I would also like to see scaled legacy dungeons come back into the game for max level. Either you can do it at max level in like a max level team, or you can scale yourself down to do it with, say, a friend who's leveling up. Of course, they are still working out how to do the rewards for that. And also, it's going to be kind of hard if fights were never intended to be done with a lot of good gear. So you have a look at any of the vanilla dungeons nowadays at low level, and you can just steamroll through all of them. Say, Wailing Caverns, you can just blaze through it, because they didn't intend you to have heirlooms or good gear. So to sum up, they should have definitely harder heroics that need to be pugged, but anything above that may interfere with raids. And also, if they could put in legacy dungeons, that would be great. Now we have a final comment from Tyrior1. Now this is kind of a long one, but it kind of encompasses a lot of the stuff in the expansion, and I want to get through it as quickly as possible because I've been talking for a while. Warlords of Draenor, to me, sounds like the most promising expansion out of all that has come before. If Blizzard plays their cards right, I reckon it could be the best, or one of the best expansions they have done so far. Garrisons is essentially housing with followers. I'd like to work on my garrison more than farm dailies for 3 to 4 months. Its impact on professions such as mining and herb, they have to reward the people who select those professions. So Garrisons is going to be a good supplement to all aspects of the game. I feel like they could utilize this in improving absolutely everything, especially professions, which dearly need an overhaul, and I cannot believe they did not announce they're going to overhaul it at BlizzCon. You could also gear up your alts through Garrisons. You could probably work on your own food, just like the Tiller's farm. You could maybe boost your rep grind. And also possibly more interaction with your pets and your mounts, because right now all you can do with your mounts is summon them and look at them in a nice little list. Pets you can do quite a bit with, but it would also be nice to be able to walk around your garrison with your little Kel'Thuzad waving at you from the prairie. I am kind of worried that after a while you might not have a use for your garrison. Just like when I said on the Timeless Isle, if you're gearing up in your raid, if you're still interested in progression, you really don't have that much of a reason to go back to the Timeless Isle, unless you want pets or something. It would be good that maybe a few months after the expansion launches, or maybe 6 months after the final patch, in which case we're all doing nothing, which is what the period we're in right now. Maybe after like 2 months of work you can create something like the Sky Golem, a way to make you log in every day to do the daily things for your garrison, and you get a big reward if you continue doing it endlessly. That would also be a great way to maintain people's subscriptions. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just saying, I'm just stressing that maybe people would play longer if there was a reason to log in. That isn't pets, mounts, optional things, or raids. Getting rid of hit, expertise, dodge, parry, and reforging, thank you, is becoming a bit messy. I totally agree. Just get rid of these stats. We don't need them. All they're there for is so that when you have a look at your character's stats, you have to make sure that they're above a certain threshold with like 7.50% hits, 15% expertise. It's just a hassle, and it adds absolutely nothing to the game. So just get rid of them. No one cares. Sockets are now random. Hopefully continue Thunderforged, Warforged idea. Give more flavor and excitement to getting gear, trying to seek out the best gear you can. Hopefully they up drop rates slightly though. Also, the randomness of all of it better be finely tuned, otherwise people will get pretty pissed off. As they said at BlizzCon, fighting old easy bosses, say at the start of Siege of Orgrimmar, it sucks when nothing you can use drops, and that's in addition to the fact that these bosses are so easy you can switch off your brain. Random stats are good, but if you go too far to Diablo 3 where everything is just incredibly random, that would be bad for WoW. I was worried that by reducing the amount of sockets that jewel crafters would be out of money, but they're making gems more rare, so I don't have much of an opinion there. I just hope everything works out. As for keeping Thunderforged and Warforged, totally. I mean, every time a piece of loot drops and like my raid leader says it's Warforged, everyone just goes, yes! Why would you get rid of that? It's just a good idea on paper. Maybe some of the people who want best in slot would get pissed off, but I think there's such a minority that it doesn't really matter. Hang on, let me turn off my fan here. It's kind of cooled down. There we go. A lot of lore potential for the orcs in Draenor. They can go into a lot of the back understory of the orcs and how events in the past caused them to become who they are in WoW today. Hopefully we see a bit of the Burning Legion in this expansion as well, but I get a feeling that we won't. I feel like we need that old school vibe, the more classic, bunch of evil super villains, instead of these mega powerful, Lich King, Deathwing types. And then you got Pandaria's non-existent threat, which turned out to be Garrosh, which pretty anticlimactic if the expansion is based on Pandaria. I do feel like we are going to see a bleed over into a Burning Legion expansion. We all say the Burning Legion expansion is coming, it's going to be soon, just like the Azshara expansion. But I feel like that's what they're going for. Right now they're weaving the stories into the next expansion, just like Pandaria did for this coming one. They haven't even announced what the final villain is going to be. I feel like there's going to be so much story progression that by the time we reach the end of the expansion, there's going to be so much new stuff. I mean, we don't even know what's going to happen with Gul'dan and Kil'jaeden. I mean, are they still talking? Is Kil'jaeden still set in the past? Or is there Kil'jaeden from present day that got flushed down the Sunwell? We just don't know. I'm super glad that they're actually developing the story in WoW. I mean, back in Wrath or BC, it was going nowhere. They were running out of material. Super glad they're going in this direction, but Jesus Christ, please cover Queen Azshara. What is she doing back in the oceans of Azeroth? What are the old gods up to? And what happened to Kul Tiras? That's a whole human city set in near the Maelstrom. Where is it? Where are the people? So I hope once we do this whole Draenor Burning Legion thing, we go back and deal with that. It's kind of a big deal. Updated character models. Thank you, finally. By the way, need update Worgen. You're totally right. It is so needed. It has been for a while. I mean, you just look at Jade Forest and how amazing that looks, and then you go back to Azeroth before the Cataclysm destroyed everything, and a lot of the crap, like you go to Ungo Crater and all the trees are just incredibly blocky and awful looking. Now, back near like Wrath, when we we're first talking about character model updates, I didn't think it was needed. Like, I never even noticed that the character models didn't look that great. It was only during like Cataclysm and then like they started introducing the Worgans and the Goblins, and I'm like, they look quite a bit better than our old races. And then the Pandaren just blew everything out of the water, so totally. In terms of Worgen needing an update, they don't need to be overhauled. Like, they're fine as they are. They look fine. The entire problem with Worgen is that they have clipping issues where like they'd raise their arms and their arm would go through their body, and the female Worgen faces, and actually no, the faces on both male and female. There's no customization options there. Like, you can change kind of little colorish textures, and the hair just is like the same. You can add little things to it, but there's just like no customizations there. So they need to add customization, and they need to fix those clipping issues. They can leave the Worgen as they are. They don't have to do an entire overhaul. And goblins are perfect. Come on. I'm hoping they'll have all these race overhauls finished by the expansion launch. I feel like it's a pull for a lot of people to be able to play the game again, jump to level 90 and have these like really cool looking old or overhauled races. What I think will happen is they'll have every vanilla race done by the expansion launch. They'll rush it out. They'll do it as fast as they can. And as soon as the expansion launches, they're going to be working on the Draenor and Blood Elves, because they have confirmed that they are working on those, and they'll release those in a patch. And they'll maybe do Worgen if they have the time. But I'm looking forward to that. Every NPC will be changed. I mean, I already had a go at BlizzCon, and you can notice immediately when you're fighting mobs. Like, I was fighting orcs in that Black Temple area, and the orcs looked amazing. Not only did they have really cool new models, but they also had different skin textures that you probably couldn't customize when you make a character. Anyway, World Endless PvP Battleground thingy. Sounds awesome. Well, I have no comment because I barely ever do PvP. The only time I had to do it was for the legendary quest chain, and I hated it. So that's why I never talk about PvP, because I just don't have any opinion on it. It's good. Sounds good. Totally. I'm squish needed. However, I will miss critting my 2.8 million executes. Alright, so from when I played at the demo unit at BlizzCon, I didn't even realize the item squish was in place until I actually looked at the numbers on my hit points. Until that time, I was just doing DPS to mobs. It was all fine, you know, it just looked the same. But as soon as you open your character sheet and you start looking at all your stats, it's like, do I have res sickness? That's the mindset you have. It's like, there's something wrong with my character. I'm doing fine, but all my stats are just like nothing. I feel like I'm level 60. And then you kind of realize, yeah, alright, it's the item squish, yeah. I'm pretty sure every casual player will need to explain to them. But once you get used to it, and it really didn't take me long at all to get used to it, you don't even notice. It's exactly the same gameplay. And I mean, the only reason they're doing this, because, you know, looking at big numbers, it's not that big of... No one really cares about that. The problem was in the heroic Garrosh fight for Siege of Orgrimmar, where he would have 3 phases where he regenerates health in order to avoid the massive, ridiculously, like, billions of health numbers. The fact that the engine can't compute those, that's the reason that happens. By doing the item squish, it means for in the next couple of expansions, you can have the numbers increase to the Pandaria sizes again, and then you squish it all once more. So it's going to be confusing, but the payoff is going to be better than having every boss regenerate health in like 5 phases. So the boost to 90, old players to resub or convince new players to jump right in. Whoever came up with this instant level 90 thing is a genius. I mean, they could have handled it better when they displayed it in the trailer, and you immediately freeze up, like they're not seriously giving everyone like a free 90. It's just fuel for the haters that already hate Warcraft, but once they explain that it's 1 per account, and you can just buy the game for someone and they can play with everyone else in the same leveling experience and then get to endgame and do all the fun stuff, that makes sense. I mean, the game's been out long enough that they can do that. The only other alternative was to make it way easier than it is now to reach level 90 and beyond, which just would have been ridiculous. I mean, with heirlooms and experience bonuses from guilds, it's chaotic. So this is a good idea. I don't think it'll convince old players to resub to the game. I feel like if you're finished with WoW, you're gonna be finished with WoW. You'll come back for an expansion if you think it sounds good, or if you know someone that's having fun with it. So I don't think it would change anyone's mind whether they would play it or not. But to convince new players to jump right in, absolutely. I mean, the amount of people that you talk to that are like, so you can just play immediately, like the new expansion, like all the new content, like right now. Like I don't have to level up through all that 1 to 90 crap. That's a good thing. I feel like it's up to the other features of an expansion to get old players back into the game, but in terms of new players, yes, definitely, this is it. I mean, this combined with the new character models, new players are just going to love this game. And now Tyrael1 finishes the extremely large comment with, "There are lots of reasons I could go on about how amazing this expansion could be. I don't really have any negative thoughts about this expansion. As long as Blizzard does their job well, I think I'm going to be very satisfied with this expansion." Now, I totally agree, but when you break down the actual expansion, when they announced all the features, you realize that they didn't really add much new to the game. You think about BC, they added flying, they added all these different raid modes and heroic 5-mans and all this cool stuff. They also had the Blood Elves and the Draenor. Now in Wrath of the Lich King, you had the Death Knight class, you had Northrends, you had new profession. In Cataclysm, you had all the new revamped zones for every zone that has ever existed. You had new archaeology profession, you had the guild advancement system. You also had goblins and worgens. Now in Pandaria, you had the monk class, you had the pet battle system, you had challenge modes. You also had Pandarans. Now every expansion has brought something new to the table, a lot of new things to the table. Some of this stuff has been scrapped, like the dance studio or flying combat. But for the most part, they've all introduced a lot of stuff when the expansion launches. Now during patches, they introduce a lot more new stuff. But Warlords is only really introducing Garrisons, and that's kind of it. They've got a lot of features, like a lot of quality of life improvements for the player base, but when you break it down, Garrisons is the only really new thing. So unless they're planning to just release all kinds of new big features during the patches, then all you're really getting is just the bread and butter of an expansion, you know, a new continent, the new level cap, you get dungeons, you get raids. It's only a very small gripe, and I'm sure they're going to introduce a lot more new cool stuff in the year-long cycle of the expansion. But it is something to think about, the fact that they're really not introducing much new stuff. But I agree, this is shaping up. I mean, you have a look at Pandaria. A lot of Pandaria was fantastic in terms of gameplay, in terms of a story tone. There's always a teething period when you introduce this new crazy idea to the game, a new tone of the story, that it's going to take people a while to get into it. And that's pretty much what happened with Pandaria. I'm sure a lot of people can appreciate what it is now. I'm personally appreciating that they're moving the story along. I never really thought they were going to do that. I thought they were going to just announce a Warcraft 4 and then build another WoW based on that. So personally, the thing I'm most looking forward to, I mean, a lot of these features are cool, and I really hope they do these scaled legacy dungeons one day, but the major thing I'm looking forward to is where the story goes, because that's the most exciting part. No one knows what's going to happen next. Warlords of Draenor was so completely just out of nowhere, and you think back to Garrosh being the end villain for Pandaria. If they had not announced that, it would have taken us a while to figure that out, because it is such a complete tone shift from, you know, Kung Fu Pandas and all this, to go from that to just this March on Orgrimmar. It was crazy. That kind of stuff I love. That's what was in Warcraft 3. That's why everyone really loves that game, among other reasons. Anyway, that's enough of my rambling. That's it for this discussion. As for next week's topic, what was the best and worst raid in Warcraft history? Was your favorite raid from the popular ones like Ulduar or Karazhan or even Naxxramas? What about terrible raids? Was it Firelands? Was it Dragon Soul? Or maybe even Molten Core with the Core Hounds? I'm sure you'll have different opinions, so what I want you guys to do is go down below into the comment box and leave me your thoughts on the best and worst raid in WoW. And next week, hopefully next week, I'll cover what it is in a top something list. I might just have the worst raid and then 2 honorable mentions and then the best raid and 2 more honorable mentions. Something like that. I'll work it out later. Anyway, that's it. Have a good one.